welcome to National Arts. I'm Mike Baker. Whenever you talk about Marvin Hamlisch, you'd better be certain which Marvin Hamlisch you're talking about. Is it the songwriter of such hits as The Way We Were, or the music director and arranger of the Barbra Streisand concerts? Or perhaps it's the composer of such Broadway hits as A Chorus Line, film scores like The Spy Who Loved Me, or concert pieces like Anatomy of Peace. You may even be talking about the conductor of the Pittsburgh and Baltimore Pops orchestras. Well, whichever Hamlisch you're talking about, one thing's for certain. They all have their roots in a childhood full of education and music. Marvin, you had parents who fostered you like crazy, didn't you?
That's right. It's absolutely true. Well, you know, both my parents were from Vienna, and they had to escape Vienna because of the coming of Hitler and the war, whatever. And if you have Viennese parents, particularly the fact that my father was a musician, then education becomes probably the most important thing in one's life for the children. And my father would literally go around to people and say, "What's a good music school?" And all of a sudden, into his vocabulary came the name Juilliard. And his dream then became getting Marvin into Juilliard.
You have fond memories of your mother tending a wound that you suffered after a baseball game or waiting for you outside of the classroom, yes. And of literally your father pacing with you to relieve tension on the roof of Juilliard. That's right. What kind of parents you had.
Right. My father probably gave me the best advice, which was that I used to always, you remember I was about 7, 8, 9 years old, we're talking a youngster who, in order to keep the scholarship at Juilliard, because my parents couldn't afford it, we actually saw what is called a jury. At the end of the year, you have an examination in front of a jury. And that's a very scary situation, particularly if your scholarship is riding on it. And we went up to the roof of Juilliard one day, and I was getting ready to do this thing, and I was always throwing up. I had Maalox tablets, constantly. And I said to my father, since I want to be a composer anyway, what do I need this for? What do I need to go through all of this with the Beethoven and the Bach, and all this stuff, when the chances are I'm never going to become really, Horowitz? And my father said, well, if you want to be able to show people and play for them the music that you're writing, you have to be able to play it as well as it can be done. You have to be able to show it beautifully. It has to be packaged well. And in order to do that, you've really got to understand how to play the piano. And it made a lot of sense. And of course, now in what I do, all of those years at Juilliard become,
yes.
the most important thing. But he was able to understand. What I'm saying is, he didn't argue and say, no, forget composition, you're going to be Horowitz. He took my side of the story and then showed me why it was important to keep doing what I was doing.
You weren't even 10 years old, and you were going to Broadway shows by yourself. You
right.
had some favorites like Damn Yankees and
right.
Pajama Game, and
right.
West Side Story was another.
West Side Story is still my all-time greatest show.
In a recent concert which you did with the Pittsburgh Pops, you talked about Julie Stein's Overture to Gypsy
yes.
being your favorite overture.
The greatest overture ever written. It's amazing. I was also going to professional trumpet school. The fellow sitting next to me in junior high and high school turns out to be the son of Gypsy Rose Lee. And when I found out that his mother was Gypsy Rose Lee, and here's this great show that I'm going crazy about called Gypsy, I must have seen the show in my lifetime 25 times, and like 6 times very quickly in a row. In fact, I don't know if you can remember, or people can remember this, but the entrance of Gypsy actually takes place in the back of the orchestra, where you're sitting, and she comes down an aisle and goes up. And I used to come after the first show, I used to watch it like this, the beginning of the show. People would say, well, no. I go, no, I'm waiting. And it was going, oh, here she comes, That overture is the classically perfect overture, because not only does it give you the vitality of the whole show, but there's one after the other of the best songs you ever heard. They just are. So for me to eventually, get to know Julie Stein and get to love Julie Stein, it all started right there with Gypsy. And it was no doubt, if there ever was a moment where I decided I'm not looking back, I'm going into this field, I'm going into, quote, show business, Gypsy put it away. Done. I want to be part of this.
You were 15 or 16 when you actually composed the first songs for Liza Minnelli as a gift for her mother, an audition of sorts.
Right.
That was momentous in your life.
That was one of the most momentous nights of my life, because a friend of mine was dating Liza Minnelli. I got to know Liza through my friend. You know, we both went to the same school. And we decided for Christmas to do a thing where we would go into a studio and we would record 3 or 4 songs with Liza and then present it to her mother, Judy Garland, at Christmas. Well, not only did we present it at a beautiful Christmas party, but the kicker, there were 2 kickers that night. One, I mean, Judy loved it and kept saying, sing it, sing it, sing it. And then she said to me, would I accompany her on the piano to sing a couple of songs? Well, I mean, this is like asking, you know, I don't know, you know, I mean, what can I say? This is the ultimate. And interestingly enough, of course, the chance, I mean, I knew just about every song that she'd ever done. So, I mean, it was, you know, for me to play San Francisco and having her sing it, you know, next to you, that evening, you know, was wondrous, and it's, of course, started a long relationship. I mean, I've known Liza forever, and it's something that I always remember with just great, fond memories.
People remember you, too, as the rehearsal pianist on Funny Girl when you met a young Barbra Streisand, and there's a great moment when you confronted her in terms of her performance.
Yes, right.
That was a lifelong lesson you were to learn.
It's called being naive, you know. I was out of town, and I was the assistant to the vocal director, Buster Davis, who taught me so much about how to deal with people and all whatever. And but I was very fastidious when it came to, now these are the notes, and I'm the guy out here, you know, and Buster was in New York, and I was going out of town, and I'm the assistant, and being the assistant, it's going to be like, got to be this perfect, you know. So there was this arrangement that had been written, and I noticed night after night that Barbra Streisand started singing around it a little bit, you know, starting note here, and I went backstage and I said, you know, so if you do that, then you know the rest of the people singing, you know, the other parts, they won't match with you. It'll be out of sync, you know, out of tune. And she said to me, who do you think the people here are actually coming to see in this show and listening to, you know? And I said, okay, I'll just change these other parts. I mean, she was absolutely right. I mean, you have to understand that one of the things that I learned a lot in show business is that you have to understand people, you have to understand their ego. It's very important to be malleable, because otherwise, if you're strict, like I was at that time, you know, I mean, I was a 17-year-old kid, if you're strict like that, it's never, you're never going to survive the business. The business does not allow for that. These things are living, breathing events, and they don't, it's not like a movie. Once you put the movie out, it's the same no matter from here to Singapore to wherever, that movie is the same movie. Shows are living, breathing events, and they will live and breathe, particularly not just on what's happening on the stage, but how the audience is reacting. If the audience is enjoying and loving and whatever, the actors will tend to really, you know, let loose and go crazy. If the audience is a little reserved, the actors might even work harder to try to, you know, get them, because they're the challenge, you know. All of that is stuff that you learn, and that's very important in, quote, when you think about the person who's the old pro, so to speak. And I started out as the young novice, and I think as I got older, I have learned a lot of lessons too that I've really used.
You've learned how to bend, essentially.
Lots of bending.
You bend also on The Way We Were too.
Yes.
But that ultimately reached fruition.
What happened on that was very interesting. It's kind of a funny story. We wrote the song, I mean, I was writing the movie and wrote the song with the Bergmans for The Way We Were, which is a great, wonderful, it's a good challenge, because when you're writing for the best voice in the world, you know, it's just, you just think to yourself, wow, you know. And we wrote the song, and everybody was happy, and Barbara was very helpful in even writing some of the music on it, and just very helpful. And then, because time passed, she asked for another song. I think because probably she got a little bored by it after a while. And we wrote The Way We Were too, which is funny enough on her, you know, there's a CD that came out that she did a kind of a retrospective, and it's on that, you know, on that album. But finally, Sidney Pollack did a very smart thing. He put both songs up in the picture, that we could actually watch the picture, and it became clear that the first one was the one to do. It was very important that we try to write a song that somehow or other would be not only different, but a little bit more complicated. So we turned out to be this prevailed.
In 1966, you had an evening free and you decided to go to a rehearsal of Joyful Noise.
Right.
You were so impressed with the choreography that afterwards you went back and asked to meet the choreographer.
Right.
The rest is history.
Yeah, you know, I saw this rehearsal, and I tell you, when it was over, everybody was going to see the stars or the director, this, that, whatever. And I kept saying, let me see the choreographer. And it was a fellow by the name of Michael Bennett, a young guy. And I'll never forget, I said to him, after I told him it was just brilliant, I said to him, I'm going to put your name in my book under G for genius, which I did. I put Michael Bennett's name in under G. I said, one day we're going to work together. I said, because you're the guy I want to work with. Because you could just tell from that choreography that here was a person who was so knowledgeable about how to really use a stage, how to use dancers, how to propel a story. You just knew that this was something very special.
He got you on the phone not long after that,
Right,
and he
right.
said, I'd like you to come back to New York because I want to tell you about a show I want to do.
Right.
You get there, he says, there's no stars,
Right.
there's no sets,
Right.
just dancers.
That's right. At that moment, I could now say to you, I take credit for saying, aha, I could see the light. All I could see was that I was putting my money on Michael Bennett because I didn't know what the show was. I really didn't. In fact, even when we were rehearsing some of the show in the beginning, I didn't know what we had. I just knew that we had a very interesting combination of people who all at the same moment, and this is so important, wanted to do something really quite brilliant. And Michael had this idea which seemed, if it could be fleshed out, to be interesting and something was going to happen. But this wasn't like the normal way of doing a show. I mean, this wasn't like someone saying, now here's the book, and you read the book and you go, I like it or not. No, no. This was a 3-sentence idea, basically. You know, we have these dancers, we have these tapes, these dancers have spoken, we're going to take the tapes and we're going to have them all printed out, you know, we're going to have it all transcribed and we'll see what they said. And we'll just basically rehearse until we get something that's good, period. Are you in? And I said, I'm definitely in.
Your gut feeling was good there.
Yeah, and my gut feeling there was good.
But you decided, I'm going to write character songs. I'm not going to write dance numbers.
Right, exactly.
So you set at least the standard of where the show was heading.
I felt very strongly that if you wrote too many dance numbers, I worried that the show would become so specific to dancers that it wouldn't have the empathetic value that I thought was very important. So did Michael. The question was, how are we going to do it with music and lyrics, you know? And really, the unsung hero, really, of that show was Ed Kleban, because to him, accuracy was so important, to really know the characters. And I think this combination, you know, these three, you know, particularly, and then of course we had our book writer, you know, and we had 2 book writers actually who you know, who came in. I mean, Nick Dante, who did such a great job, whatever. To me, if I look back at my life, the greatest disappointment in my life is that you wait in a show, you wait to find the right combination of people. I mean, Rodgers and Hammerstein didn't just do one show, you know. Here we had this perfect combination, and literally, a few years later, everybody was gone.
One moment in the present, and you can't forget the rest. For the girl is second best to none. Side, who, side, give her your attention. Do I really have to mention?
Let's also talk about how you like to compose a song. You don't like someone to walk in and hand you all the lyrics, because
Right.
therein lies the rhythm. You like to have the hint of the song, where you're going with it, what it's supposed to be about, and then you draft the melody at the keyboard.
Right, I like particularly to know maybe the title of the song, maybe a few lines of the song, but it's hard for me to write when, you know, every lyric is there. It's very hard because it has, as you said, established the scansion, the rhythm, And sometimes I just don't feel it that way, you know, so it's, but every song is different. Every song I've written, I mean, there is no formula. There's no formula for a hit song, there's no formula for a bomb song, there's no formula for how do you write it. Sometimes you'll get an idea at 4 a.m. in the morning, sometimes the lyricist will say, I have an idea for a melody, sometimes I'll have an idea for a lyric. It's constantly a change, and each lyricist that I work with, it's a different mode. It's a different mode of working.
It took you 5 days to essentially research, adapt, cut, edit, and get ready the music for The Sting.
Right.
But that was really Juilliard at work, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was all engines going. You know, I was not, and a lot of people, I hope are not offended by this, I didn't really know that much about Scott Joplin, if I knew anything at all. I mean, you know, so basically what I had done was I had gotten all of the music, but literally practically every piece of music that Scott Joplin ever wrote, including Tremonisha, okay? And I started playing it and then looking at it. And there were certain things that already were pretty well a given that were going to be in the film, you know? And other things I was finding. And I found these things and I played them for George Ray Hill. I said, these are the best ones. I said, these are the ones that kill me. And it was almost like, I don't know why this happened, but as I was working on the film, I mean, there's not that much music in the film, but as I was working on the film, everything that I would touch to make it fit only required little itty bitty changes. It didn't require a massive overhaul. I'll never forget the night that I worked on one of my favorite moments in that film. It's the moment where Robert Redford is looking up at the apartment building and knows that that woman is up there and he's very lonely and wants to go up there, and they finally end up in bed together. And I knew that I was going to use Solace, this beautiful piece of music called Solace. But I'm telling you now, except for writing a counter melody to Solace, which I thought was important, I took those pages out of the Scott Joplin book. I sat down and watched the Moviola, okay, which is the machine that the film is going on. I played it, I swear, after the first time through, I went, this fits. I mean, I don't have to, there was nothing much to do, you know what I'm saying? So for me, my head was working very well. This was the kind of project that you could go until 4 o'clock in the morning because you loved it so much. And it wrote itself, and I was thrilled by it.
During one of those times that you described when your career went on hiatus,
Right.
You actually discovered something that was to become a big part of your life for the next 20 years, and that's guest conducting.
Yes, I mean, what happened was I had a wonderful agent who told me that Gershwin used to go out and do concerts, and I couldn't believe this, you know, because I thought the life of a composer should really be straightforward. You sit at home, you write the thing, put it out, go home. And I started out, I'll never forget the first concert I did actually with an orchestra was in Minneapolis, freezing in Minneapolis. And it was I didn't do very well at all. But it became not only a challenge, but I loved conducting an orchestra. But the whole thing became one big, now we got to figure out this puzzle. You know, I mean, how do I get them to like me, and what should I do, and what should the repertoire be? And that again, here we go again, you know. And we started out with lousy reviews, and then all of a sudden we got better and things, you know. So it's It is a long and winding road.
Now you have two orchestras, Baltimore and Pittsburgh.
Right. I'm the conductor for the Pittsburgh Symphony Pops Orchestra. I've been there now over a year and a half, and we've had, I must say, we've had great success, which I'm very thrilled about. All the dreams that I've had for that orchestra are slowly coming true. We went up in subscriptions by 27%. I said I wanted to get on television, and we were on television. We were part of the PBS, fund drive. And now I've added the Baltimore Symphony, also in the Pops, but I don't start that until September '96.
Because you are so experienced in all the musical media, you are revolutionizing the symphonic performance, and that's your aim.
I am aiming to make sure that younger people, slowly but surely, will treat the Pops event as they would going into a pool, meaning they don't have to dive in, they can start off with one toe, but they know the pleasure of a pool on a 90-degree day. And in the same way, what we're trying to do in the Pops is to invigorate it with not just music, obviously, but it's almost multimedia in what I'm trying to do. We have dancers, sometimes we have lots of guest artists. I'm very happy to say to you that we're going to go on tour with Linda Ronstadt. I mean, we are stretching the borders of light classical music and saying we want to get into the 80s and 90s, and we want to have guest artists, and we want to have those guest artists appeal to younger people so that the younger people will say, I like this music. When I walk out originally to conduct, I'll always notice a 5 or 6 year olds. You can't miss them, you know what I mean? And if there's a 5 or 6 year old in the first 3 rows, I swear, I always say that at the end of the concert, I say, if that kid stayed awake, we really did good, didn't we? You know what I mean? And I usually let the child take a bow, and I then have them come backstage and say, what'd you like, what didn't you like, whatever. I think it's valuable to try, to really go out and try, to not just keep redoing the same concerts that have been done forever, but to open this thing up, so it's very exciting.
And Marvin, you're getting into some composition too. I know your
Yes.
parents would be very proud of you. When you look at Anatomy of Peace, I'm sure they're looking down and they just think this is wonderful. One Song is another example. Tremendous reviews for your symphonic compositions.
I'm very fortified by Anatomy of Peace for a lot of reasons. First of all, it was a wonderful commission to get. The idea of the piece is that it's based on this book by Emery Reeves, who basically talked about how nationalism, this was written in 1945, how nationalism he thought was going to bring a kind of a death blow to the League of Nations. And he was absolutely right, because they couldn't all agree on a set of laws. And so my piece is basically about that, and it's a very moving work, actually, and it's with full symphony orchestra and a children's choir. And the idea is that the nations of the earth are really the orchestra, and they're all in disarray, and all of a sudden a flute starts to play this theme. It's a very mellow and very sweet theme, and this flute during the piece acts as a kind of a magnet and tries to get to it all of the other members of the orchestra to agree to this theme. Because I do a lot of different music and I get involved in lots of different types of projects, there's no such thing as I don't think, as the pure, that's Marvin Hamlisch. I mean, I don't know that you could tell that the person who wrote Chorus Line also wrote the music for Take the Money and Run, also wrote Sophie's Choice, okay? Now, I consider that to be good because I feel that each of these scores is right for each project and it shows a certain versatility. When I'm doing the Anatomy of Peace, for me, it's a rather important kind of culmination of what I think my career is about.
It's hard to imagine an award that Marvin Hamlisch has not been honored with, and for good reason. He's had a broad and indelible impact on American music, on stage, screen, in the concert hall, and over the airwaves. Until next time, remember, art was meant to be appreciated, so you be a part of it.